Hey Rich Girls, Kirby here. Welcome to another episode of Rich Girls Guide. Alright, for those of us who celebrate, Merry Christmas. And for those of you who do not, apparently Otto, happy holidays, and I hope you're enjoying your day. I wrapped up the 4-part 401k series last week, and throughout the month I have been collecting your 401k questions, which I'm going to answer right now. Before we dive in, I want to say a huge thank you for tuning in today. If you find this information helpful and want to support me so that I can make more content for you, please follow wherever you are tuning in right now. And a super quick reminder that you can view these in video format on YouTube and Spotify. Please note, this is not financial advice. This is simply my opinion and should be used for entertainment purposes only. Since today is a major holiday and we are doing a more loosey-goosey Q&A format, obviously, I thought I would recruit some helpers for today's video. Okay, so I did get a few questions. However, most of them were actually not 401k related. So there's only 4 401k questions from you listeners, but I did recruit my husband to scour the Reddit universe and get me some other 401k questions. So we're going to go over those today, and I don't know what they are, so I'm just going to answer based off of whatever pops into my head. All right, first question.
Okay, so if you are someone who has multiple different retirement accounts, so say 401k, IRA, maybe just an emergency fund or some CDs, how should you prioritize your saving?
Sorry, Otto's just in the background, so if you can hear him and Teddy, and there's lots of noises going on. Okay, so essentially, let me just say it back to you because I was a little distracted. So how do you prioritize saving when you have a bunch of different accounts? So you might have like an individual retirement account, a 401k, savings account, emergency fund, that stuff.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. That is such a good question. So first and foremost, you always want to make sure your emergency fund is fully funded, which if you have followed me since the first episode, you know that I am an offender of that one, but I do think that one is very important. So you want to make sure that you have at least 3 to 9 months, kind of in the sweet spot is 6 months worth of expenses saved. Now, expenses are not going to be like your normal month's worth of expenses because this is basically in case of an emergency. So you lose your job, something major happens. This is basically yeah, that's fine. Can we try to bring Teddy out? All right, we did a little doggy switcheroo. Okay, so you have a fully funded emergency fund. I'm going to do a whole episode on emergency fund, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but first and foremost, fully fund your emergency fund. After that, I would definitely go hard into the retirement savings. Honestly, whatever is going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So if you have a 401k at your employer and they offer an employer match, you want to make sure you're absolutely getting that employer match, because that's just free money.
He's going back.
All right, we have no dogs because they're being dickheads right now. So fully fund your emergency fund, max out your 401k employer match. So if they give you, let's say they do like a 4% dollar for dollar employer match, make sure you are doing up to at least that 4%. After that, it really doesn't matter, like as long as you are saving appropriately for retirement. So anywhere from like 10 to 15% of your income, maybe a little bit more. If you're not sure what that number is, check out my last episode and we do a fun little Excel calculation to figure out exactly how much you should be saving every single year in order to retire when you want to retire. So hopefully that answered that question.
Sorry, these dogs are distracting. All right, this one is a Dave Ramsey-esque question. So someone says they're about to receive around $5,000 from like a side job, and they were planning on using that to pay down their mortgage, and we're wondering if it would make more sense to put that away in a 401k that's growing at a higher rate than their mortgage interest rate.
Yeah, so that last part of the question is definitely the dictator. Like, what is the mortgage rate on your mortgage? So that applies for any loan. So if you're looking at paying off your mortgage, if you're looking at paying off a car loan, a credit card, you want to look at whatever interest rate that loan has. If you have a low interest rate, if you locked in an interest rate, like 5-6 years ago, and you're like in the 2 or 3% range, for the love of God, do not pay that off unless you have everything else like fully funded. You've already maxed out your 401k, maxed out all IRAs. There's no reason to pay those off early. If your mortgage is higher, if it's like 6-7%, that just depends. I never see a problem putting more into retirement. Now, the only caveat to that is if you have like credit card debt, obviously those are going to be much higher. Those are going to be in the double digits, probably somewhere in like the 20% range. Always pay off the credit card. And sometimes auto loans can sometimes be a little bit higher. Generally ours has been like twice as much as if we get like a car and we get a car loan the same time we get a mortgage. From what I've seen, at least, it's usually like twice as much the interest rate can be. And looking at some of Caleb Hammer's videos, if you watch any of his videos, people get like 12% interest rate on their cars. Like, fuck that. Pay that off. So it really just depends. Look at your interest rate and look at your general returns in your retirement.
Yeah, I'm guessing that mortgage was at least a few years old by now, because you're not getting those low interest rates now. How much of my paycheck, whether it's bi-weekly, bi-monthly, whatever it may be, should I be putting away in savings?
Go check out my last episode. But yeah, again, that really just depends on how old you are and how much you already have saved. If you are younger, the as much as you can put away, great, but the younger you are, the less of a percentage you can put away. So you could put between like 10 and 15% of your income away for retirement. And if you continue to do that, if you start that when you're like 19, 20, 21, like you are just setting yourself up for financial success. Now, if you are getting closer to 30, if you're in your 30s, if you're closer to 40, and you have not put anything away for retirement, or you've put a very small amount away, that percentage is going to increase. Okay, so I mean, I've even seen people that have come into the wealth management office I used to work at. They have very minimal savings. They really didn't, I don't know what they were doing. They're just like fucking flushing money down the toilet, basically. So they would be in their 40s and they would have to put away like 30% of their paycheck into 401ks, which fucking sucked. And then it was really hard because sometimes they'd be high income earners. Okay, so these are not like dumb people. They're smart people. They have not saved appropriately for whatever reason. They now have to put away such a high percentage that it's actually hard. Like they would have to find different avenues because they would max out their 401k. They'd be putting like $25,000 a year into their 401k and they're like maxed out. And they're like, where, like how else can I put money aside because I need it to retire? So if you're younger, less of a percentage, 10 to 15%, the older you get, it's just going to keep ticking up and up and up. Again, for an exact number, go back to my last episode, do a little Excel calculation, and you can figure that out.
Someone's writing, they started a 401k, traditional, at their company. They've since left their company. Okay. They have a Roth IRA and wanted to know if they should roll that money from the 401k into the Roth IRA and take the penalty or just let it sit.
So that is a great question. Really quick clarification, that would actually not be a penalty that they would pay. So if you are rolling, if you have a traditional 401k and you've put only pre-tax money into that 401k, you can do what is called a rollover into an IRA. Now, because that's all pre-tax money, it should technically go into a traditional pre-tax IRA. However, you can put either a portion or the entire thing. So let's say they have $10,000 in this traditional 401k. If they want to roll over that entire $10,000 into a Roth IRA, they can do that. They will not pay a penalty, but they will have to pay ordinary income tax in the current year. So if they have the $10,000 in there, let's say they make $50,000 a year. If they choose to technically roll over that entire $10,000 into a Roth IRA, they can do that. There's no limit on how much you can roll over, so they can roll over that full amount into the Roth IRA. Their taxable income for the year is going to go from $50,000 to $60,000. So they're just going to have to pay the income tax on that, whatever amount that they're rolling over. The other option is you can always do a rollover from the traditional 401k into a traditional IRA. So now it's in your own hands. You can choose what to do with it. And then let's say they can't really take the tax hit of rolling over the full $10,000 from a traditional to a Roth. They can actually do a partial conversion, and you can roll over however much. So let's say he only wants to do $5,000 from a traditional into a Roth. He can just convert $5,000 from the traditional into the Roth. He now has a Roth with an extra $5,000. He still has a traditional IRA with $5,000, and that's perfectly fine. What some people will do is they will, over a course of years, do conversion, so it's a less of a taxable income hit. Let's say 1 year your taxable income is going to be less, so they'll do more of a conversion. Or next year your income is going to be like skyrocketing, you're not going to do a conversion that year because it's just going to be too much of a taxable hit. But yeah, that's a great idea. The more you can convert to a Roth, awesome. The only thing I would say is if he only has Roth, I mean, I love Roth IRAs, but if he only has Roth, he might want to leave a little bit in the traditional, just for kicks and giggles, have some options. It's all about options.
But still roll it into a new account that you can continue to contribute to?
Yeah, I would definitely do that, especially if you're going to the conversion route. There's really no reason. Once you do, if you have an old 401k and then you do a rollover into a new 401k, you're kind of fucked. Not fucked, but you're kind of fucked. Just because you can only leave it there. Your entire account is based upon this new 401k plan rules. Whereas if you do a conversion into a traditional IRA, now you can choose when to do the conversions. You can pull out money as you see fit. Whereas if it's in the new 401k, your hands are pretty tied.
Okay. In one of your previous episodes, you said the S&P 500 has done an 18% return year to date. What should you do if your 401k isn't matching that?
Great question. Whoever asked that. So 2 quick things. 1, you're not always going to outperform the market. So look at a couple of things. How is your portfolio allocated? If your entire portfolio is not 100% equity based, so you're not all in stocks, which unless you're younger, it's probably not going to be all stocks, you're probably not going to get that 18%, and that's okay. If you are getting closer to retirement, or if you're more risk averse, even if you're young, but you do not like seeing those huge waves, you're more risk averse, you're probably not going to outperform the market, especially in a high performing market like 2023 has been so far. So I would first take a look at that. And then also within your 401k on your statement, they should give you the return, right? Because you're saying that you have probably not beaten that 18%. So if you look at where it shows your return, it should hopefully give you a benchmark. And the benchmark, whoever your 401k is through, they are legally obligated to give you a correct benchmark. So they are not going to manipulate the numbers. I know some people like conspiracy theory. No, they are legally obligated. They get fined out of their fucking asshole if they mess with these numbers. So there will be a benchmark on there and it will tell you what their benchmark is compared to your actual portfolio. The only caveat to that is if you are under allocated in the equity space. So let's say your risk tolerance is higher and you are younger, then maybe your equity exposure should be kicked up a notch if you only have a little bit in equities. Sorry.
Especially when yelling fucking assholes. But all right, so someone's saying when they created their retirement account, someone made the allocations for them. Mm-hmm. So they want to know, should they leave those allocations as they are? Should they update them? And if so, how often should they check and examine what they want to do?
Okay, so this is a great question. So either you opened your 401k, and sometimes this is the case when you open your 401k, they will automatically have like preset allocation. So you can say, oh, I want to be super aggressive, or I want to be mildly aggressive. I want to have, growth and income. So in those cases, yeah, you definitely want to update those. I would say annually is a good time, especially if you're looking at like open enrollment like we just had. That's always a good time to just go in, check everything, make sure like everything is still like up to par. Let's say you had some major life changes over the last year or so, and you've just become like less risky. Like you're like, I'm going to take some risk off the table. Anytime there's like a big change like that, you definitely want to go in and just like update it, tweak it a little bit. Another thing you can also do is always just go into a financial advisor, have them look at it. You can also call, if you look on your 401k statement, there's typically some kind of like financial representative on there. You can always give them a call and just say, hey, I've had this, same allocation for X number of months or X number of years. These are my financial goals. Could you recommend some of the funds within the plan? Because they're going to know all of the funds within the plan. They're going to work with people like you all the time. So if you're unsure, you can always just give them a call and they'll be able to give that to you. And usually they'll do it for free. Usually if that's the financial rep on that statement, they will completely do that for you for free. So that's always a good option as well.
So kind of a similar question. Okay. More straightforward though. Is self-managing your 401k a good idea?
Depends on who it is. Listen, some of you smart people, okay, I'm talking to you doctors and lawyers and people who work with numbers but do not work in finance. You should not be managing your own 401k because y'all are way too smart. Okay, and you think you can like time the market, you think you can like make changes, you're like, oh, you know what, I could be a stock trader, but like I just don't even have the time. No, you fucking can't. No, you cannot, okay? You can manage your own 401k if you are going to set it and forget it most of the time, okay? If you're going to be someone that's checking up on it every day and thinking like, I know the market's doing really well right now, so I should probably sell everything and go to cash, and then when the market is bad, I'll go back in. You cannot time the fucking market. You cannot time the market. So if you're like, oh yeah, that's me, 100%, go find someone, go call someone, or call the person on your 401k statement because you cannot manage your own 401k. If you are like me and you're a set it and forget it person, you're good checking in once a year, maybe, once a quarter even is fine. If you look every 3 months and you're like, let's just make sure everything's up to par, reallocate as needed. Or if you're very scared of numbers and you just like don't want to have any like completely hands off, you can always just choose a target date fund. If that's you, I'd probably just use a target date fund. What I would not do is go to a financial advisor and pay someone a lot of money to manage your 401k. And the reason I say that is because 401ks in general have very small number of investment choices. On the high end, you might have 50 choices, which might sound like a lot, but it's really not a lot. And because the 401k plans have plan sponsors, there's a lot of people that are involved in these plans, they do not want anybody to sue them. Like point blank, period. They do not want to have anybody come after them. So the options you have in your 401k are not going to be very risky. Like the most risk you're going to have is like a super aggressive fund. There's not going to be, hopefully, I hope to God you don't have any fucking crypto. And if you do, very small sleeve, okay? Very small sleeve. But for the most part, they are going to cap you as far as how much risk you can take. So there's really not much point in paying someone a lot of money to manage your 401k. Now, IRAs, other accounts where you have literally hundreds of thousands of options to choose from where you can fuck yourself over really bad, that one you might want to pay someone. But for a 401k specifically, I would probably not pay someone to manage it.
And then kind of another one on the same topic. Okay. If you are self-managing, what types of things should you be looking at?
Okay, so if you are self-managing, I would go back to, I can't remember exactly which episode it was. It was either the second or the third option, second or the third episode of my 401k series, but essentially you want to be looking at if you're looking between two different mutual funds, let's say you already have two mutual funds, or you have a mutual fund in mind that you want to go into, you want to do a growth oriented mutual fund. You have 3 different options and you don't know which one to choose. Look at the expense ratio. So the expense ratio is basically like a hidden fee that is not going to show up in your statement, but you will be able to find it on the website. If there's one that has a really high expense ratio, like they can go all the way up to like 1%, that means the fund is taking out 1% of your income that you're making off of that fund. And you don't see that. You don't see that expense coming out. So you want something with a low expense ratio. You also want to look at the performance. So you want to take, 2 or 3 different funds. You want to, stack up their performance numbers. I like looking at the longest running performance number that they have. So if they both have like a 10-year figure, look at those 10-year figures, see how they stack up. But then you also want to take a look at the 1-year return figure, because the 1-year return figure is going to give you a better indication of the people that are actually running the fund currently. They might have a really strong 10-year return because they had an amazing team that worked really well together, because remember, it's a mutual fund and you can only do mutual funds in a 401k. So there's actually a mutual fund manager that is managing whatever fund. They are picking out the stocks that are coming in, coming out. So if there's a poor manager, which you will be able to see within the 1-year return, okay, they might have a really good track record for 10 years, but if their 1-year return is not good compared to somebody else's, might not be a good fund to look at. And then obviously just making sure that your allocation is correctly allocated. Do not put all of your money just in one fund unless it's a target date fund. You want to make sure it's diversified, so it has lots of different, mid cap, small cap, large cap. You want to have a little bit of international, that kind of stuff. Just make sure like a little bit well diversified.
So I know you just said you cannot time the market.
No, you can't time the market. Nobody can time the market. If they tell you, they're fucking lying. Run away. Red flag. Red flag.
All right. So one question was, and I'm guessing this was a little bit older. If the market is down, does it make sense to slow down contributions into your 401k and opt more for, if you have like a high rate savings account or a high yield savings account, something like that, where it's going to be a guaranteed return rather than potential losses?
That's the stupidest question I've ever heard in my entire life. If the market is down, you want to put more into your 401k. You don't want to put less into your 401k. Somebody at my old office used to say this, and it's like a stupid saying, but it's honestly so true. If you want to throw a brick through my window because your account is down so much, that's fine. Throw it through my window, but attach a check to it, because that's the time that you want to put money into the market. Having said that, especially with 401ks, well, no. Going to go back to the original question. If the market is down, the last thing you want to do, sorry, I know I'm getting loud. I'm passionate. The last thing you want to do is slow down your contributions, okay? Because when the market is down, it's bottomed out. That means stocks are on sale, especially your mutual funds, okay? Because the mutual funds, they're not going to disappear, right? And as long as you're not going to be taking distributions from this account anytime soon, all right, like the next 3, 5, 10 years, it doesn't matter when you bought them, right? So if you can buy more when they're on sale, because for the most part, you're going to be putting in the same amount to your 401k no matter what. You're either electing a certain dollar amount or you're electing a percentage of your income to go into your 401k. So you would rather have your 401k, you want your money to go in when you can buy more shares for the same amount of money, right? And then, because at some point, those are going to go up. The last thing you want to do is put more into your 401k when the market's doing well. Because when the market's doing well, guess what? Everything is more expensive. So you're actually buying less shares for the same amount of money. I know that sounds contradictory to not time the market, but you don't know where in the cycle it's going to be. So long story short, do not stop your 401k contributions because the market is down. That's stupid.
Not 401k related, but how much should you withhold from your paycheck for taxes?
Yes, someone DM'd me this and I was just sitting there cackling for like a full minute. So not really a 401k question, correct, but it is important. It kind of like ties into just like your job in general. So when you're doing open enrollment or you're like doing your W-2, I think is what it's called, We've definitely had people in the past, like clients come in and if they either filled out their W-2 incorrectly or people just in general, most people don't know like what they're withholding in taxes from their paycheck, which understandable. Like I understand it can be kind of hard to figure out sometimes, but you should know how much taxes are being withheld from your paycheck. So if you're not sure, reach out to your HR rep. Usually I feel like nowadays everybody has like the online, like either like a Paylocity or like a Paycheck. So you can go in and you can actually see how much is being withheld. And that just kind of ties into like the like 401ks and like your insurance and everything. Like you should know exactly what is in what is making up your paycheck. Insurance that's being withheld, 401k contributions, HSA contributions. So make sure that you are withholding your taxes correctly, because if you don't, and you either don't fill it out at all or you fill it out incorrectly, you could have a big tax bill by the end of the year. And you won't find out until April. And then if you don't fill it out correctly, also, I just want to put this out there. Like I had an amazing HR rep. It's not the HR person's fault. Like if you fill your shit out incorrectly and you're not withholding taxes and you have a big tax bill, like that's not their fault, that's your fault. So we're going to fill this out correctly. If you guys have questions on like doing that, let me know and I can like maybe do an episode. I'm not the best with like how to fill out those forms and the taxes and whatnot, but I can tie it in. I could tie it in a little bit.
All right, back to the 401k. Something you mentioned before was making sure your account is diversified. Mm-hmm. Are there any kind of like rules that people should be following with that? Do we just mean diversification between like you said, the small, mid, large cap, or there's international real estate, energy? Are there any like hard rules or soft rules people should be following?
Yeah, I would say there's probably not a ton of like hard rules. There's definitely like if you just Google like general like diversification or like what's a well diversified portfolio, you'll get some like general rules. Personally, I like to have like a small sleeve of international, and it depends too. That I will change based off of how the market is doing, or if I see like an article in the Wall Street Journal. Those are the times where I will be reactive if international is hit pretty hard right now, but it's going to be coming back, or you think it might be coming back, maybe you do a little bit more, so like 10-15% in international. Personally, I like to have, again, because I'm a little bit riskier right now, I'm a little bit more aggressive, I like to have a fair amount in small cap growth, which is pretty risky, especially in a 401k. So at least 5%, at least like anywhere between like 2 to 5% in that. Right now, I'm exposing myself. I'm not really sure how much I have in it right now. But I would love to have like 10, 15, maybe even 20%. If you're feeling like very risky. Large cap growth is always a good one to have a little bit more in, because those are your companies that, the larger the company, the less likely they are to completely go out of business. They're still going to have like their ups and downs, but they're less likely to completely go out of business. Whereas the small cap, obviously, they're much more likely to go out of business because they're a smaller company. Same with the mid cap, like anywhere like 10-15% in that. And then just depending on, you're going to have to either decrease those or increase those percentages based off of how much equity exposure you want versus fixed income. So like CDs, money market, that kind of stuff. As far as like cash and money market, I would never have above 5% in that. Personally, I just don't think you need to, even if you're very risk averse. You can still do fixed income, you can do bonds, you can do CDs. There will be mutual funds within your 401k that will be bond focused, CD focused, US Treasury focused, that kind of stuff. So I would only keep like a very, very, very small amount of the cash. Other than that, like, again, I would just maybe like call the person on your statement just to see if they have any like specific, recommendations, or if you're just like completely hands off and you just don't even want to have to worry about it. If you choose a target date fund, if you choose one target date fund, that will be well diversified, because instead of just having a bunch of underlying stocks, typically they'll have a bunch of underlying mutual funds. So it's going to be very well diversified in terms of it's going to be hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of companies, underlying companies that you actually are holding within your 401k.
Each of those mutual funds is like a different diversified portfolio in itself.
Yeah, correct. So for those target date funds specifically, so for example, I think for us it'd be like 2065. I don't fucking know. It'll tell you it'll be usually in tranches of like 5 years. So it'll be like target date fund 2060, target date fund 2055. So pick whichever one is closest to like your retirement date. And essentially they will change the allocation as you get closer to that year to be more conservative. And the way they do that is they will have a whole set of underlying mutual fund holdings. And then they will just make sure that the equity exposure gets smaller and the fixed income exposure gets larger the closer you get to that year. That's always a good option, and that will always be well diversified.
In one of your episodes, you were talking about backdoor Roth contributions. Can you just explain those a little bit more?
I'm actually going to have a full episode out on this, a little mini bonus episode, if you will. So the only thing I will say in terms of 401ks with Roth contributions, if you are a high income earner and you're wondering about backdoor Roth contributions, first, I would say look into your 401k and make sure that they don't offer a Roth option. A lot more 401ks are now offering the Roth option. So I would just double check, make sure that is an option for you. And if it is, and you didn't know it, then there you go. I would use that first and foremost. If you're already maxing out your 401k, you're already doing the Roth portion, or your employer does not offer that option, when is it going to drop? It's going to drop this week. Yes, it's going to drop this week, Thursday. Today's Monday. No, next week. January 4th. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. January 4th, I will have my little bonus mini episode on backdoor Roth contribution. So, tune in.
It seems like there are a lot of benefits or advantages for a Roth IRA or 401k over a traditional. Are there any benefits to having a traditional IRA or 401k?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest benefit I would say to having a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k is getting the tax write-off in the current year. So if you are in a higher income earning year and you want to put away for retirement, but you really either just don't want to pay the tax bill, or it's just like you're not going to be able to for whatever reason, which you should be able to if you're a high earner and you save accordingly, you should be able to. But there's definitely, in my opinion, you should always have options. So when I say you should have options, I mean you should have options in retirement. Because if you get to retirement age and you only have traditional pre-tax money or you only have Roth money, you're kind of fucking yourself over a little bit. So you want to have your options. So with the traditional money, obviously you're going to have your RMDs, your required minimum distributions you have to take. Currently, when we retire, it's going to be at age 75. By the time we get there, it's probably going to be a little bit older than that. So that isn't as much of an issue for us as it is for like people nowadays. But just having options is good. But yeah, the biggest benefit is the tax write-off in the current year.
Now, we might have kind of answered this one already, but so if you have a 401k, whether it be traditional or Roth with your company, and you leave, what should you do with that? Okay, so I definitely answered this on like a previous episode, but I don't think I answered it on this episode at all, did I? Oh, I did a little bit about rollovers. Yeah, so if you leave your company and you had a 401k with them, you essentially have three main options. You can either leave your 401k with them. I don't recommend that option, but that's going to be your easiest option. Second option is you can roll that 401k into a new 401k with your new company. So if you take a new job and they offer a 401k, you can just roll it from your old 401k to your new 401k. That can be an okay option, but I would recommend the third option, which is a rollover from a 401k into a regular, just individual retirement account. So yes, you're going to do a rollover from the 401k into an IRA, which just stands for individual retirement account. And the reason why I typically like to recommend this is because you just have more options as to what you can do with it. You're not, as soon as you get it into a new 401k plan, you are bound to their rules and you are now limiting your investment options.
So I always recommend, as long as you have the time to do it, and you don't have to work with a financial advisor in order to do a rollover. I would, depending on your situation, it might be worth talking to someone, because if you don't do it correctly, if you do like an indirect rollover, or you don't roll over the like pre-tax option into a traditional IRA or the Roth option into a Roth IRA, things can get wonky, and I have seen that several times, unfortunately, and people can really get messed up tax-wise. The IRS does not care. They don't care. So just make sure you do it correctly, and as long as you do it correctly, I would definitely do the rollover from the 401k into an IRA.
All right, then with that, if you roll over into... All right, so following up on that, if you roll over into a traditional IRA, you can continue to make contributions to it?
Yeah, so that's the other thing too. So if you roll over from the 401k into an IRA, regardless of whether or not you're making 401k contributions with your new 401k, you can now continue to contribute to those IRAs. And to piggyback off of that, if you already have an IRA, so let's say you have your 401k, you have a traditional IRA, and you have a Roth IRA. You can go ahead and roll that 401k, let's say it's just all traditional, you can roll that all over into your existing traditional IRA. You do not have to make a new account. It can all just flow in there. And the nice thing about that too is if you already have your allocation set for your IRA, like you have your investments, you can just roll that money in and then just add it to whatever investments you have in there, whether it's stocks, mutual funds, whatever. You can just add that money to it and then just watch it grow.
So when you are rolling over your account, is there any fluctuation in the current account balance and what will be transferred over based on like having to actually sell the assets within the account?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, and generally that's going to be the case even if you do from a 401k to an IRA or a 401k to a 401k. So typically, I do think this might be changed within our lifetimes, but currently the way that it works is you roll over, and what will happen is with that old company, so old company has to sell whatever you had in your 401k. So let's say you just had like one target date fund. They're going to have to sell that. Typically you can either do it online or sometimes you have to call, just depends. But there will always be some kind of a confirmation. They will make it abundantly clear because, again, they do not want any, like, you coming back to them and saying, I didn't know that you were going to sell my shit. No, they're going to make sure, they're going to make you sign your fucking life away, okay? So either when you do it online, I've done it a ton of times with other people over the phone. Typically what they will do is they will sell your assets and then send a check to whatever the new financial institution is. And so they're going to ask you, they're going to say, hey, so-and-so, all right, so you want to do a rollover. That means we are going to sell this if it's before 4 o'clock, because 4 o'clock is when the market closes. They're going to say, if it's before 4 o'clock, they're going to say, hey, okay, we're going to sell this today before, by the time the market closes. So whatever, and it's going to be different, okay? Whatever dollar amount you see, they're going to tell you the dollar amount. They're going to say it's $99,999 right now. But because it's mutual funds, when we sell it, it's going to sell for a different amount. And we don't know what that amount is going to be until 4 o'clock today. So yes, it's absolutely going to be a different number than whatever you were like seeing that day when you did the rollover. And because they have to mail a check, whatever that number is, you're not going to have to wait a week or two for that check to be in the mail. Personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The unluckiness it would be to like miss a huge market thing in like 2 weeks. It's just not going to happen. And if it does, that's just like such a fluke. And it could be even your favor even. I do think in our lifetime, at some point, they're going to be able to just transfer the assets directly. Right now, that's not a possibility because all the financial institutions essentially have to have agreements with the different companies, and so a lot of the companies they don't have overlapping sweeping funds that they can say yes, we can just take everything that you have. So which is why they have to sell it and then send it to the company. So there is going to be a little bit of a lag when you do a rollover, but it's going to be the same if you do from a 401k to a 401k. It's going to be exactly the same thing. Typically, they're just going to have to send a check to the new company, and you're going to have to just suck it up for 2 weeks.
Well, those are all the questions that we had. If there's anything else you want to talk about, then feel free.
Do you have any 401k questions? Oh.
I mean, I made
Anticlimactic. Shut up. Cutting that. Okay.
Do you have any questions you want me to ask you? I came up with? Making sense, what? Or don't, I guess.
Ask me any 401k question about your own 401k, and then I'll roast you.
All right. When's the last time you looked at over like my 401k?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't know the answer to that. Definitely recently, because I forced you. I wasn't exactly sure what the dollar amount contributions were. I was like very close. I was within like 50 cents. But I was berating you. I was actually being really annoying. I was like, can you pull up your fucking 401k? And then we were doing open enrollment late, I might add. We couldn't change anything, which is fine. Everything looked fine. But oh my God, I was so mad at you. But yeah, so then we looked at your 401k and we looked at your allocation. I don't remember what it was, but it was fine. So.
It was fine because you made the allocations for me. So then you wanted to change them and then realized that what you wanted to change them to, you had already set them at.
No, that's okay. That's exactly what it was. So, so we had looked at this happens all the time. So you get mail, you don't open any of your mail, you don't look at no, this is actually the problem. You look at your mail, you'll open it, and then you're like, I'm going to do something about this. And then you put it somewhere and never look at it or think about it again, which I wish I had that superpower. So I actually found your 401k options like months and months ago at the old house, and I'd written in crayon next to which ones, because I couldn't find a pencil or pens. I literally had like a green crayon from the girls, and I had circled the ones that I wanted and like put the percentages, but I could not remember because I found it when we got to the new house, and I couldn't remember if we had actually gone on and made the changes because I just couldn't remember. And so I forced it. We had the sheet, and then we looked at it, and I was like, okay, we made the changes. We're good.
We didn't just make the changes. I spent 20 minutes trying to log into my Vanguard account only to realize that it was actually with Merrill Lynch.
And how many times has that happened where you tried to log into something and it takes you, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes in this case, and you're like, oh, this is not the right website.
Listen, this was recently after changing jobs.
All right. I think that is everything.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. All right, so that was a bit unhinged, but I had a lot of fun, and hopefully y'all were somewhat entertained. I will be back next week in the new year with a brand new episode and a brand new challenge to start us off strong in the new year. Have a wonderful New Year's. Make sure to kiss and love on your loved ones. Take some time to rest, and I will see you guys next Monday. Later, rich girls. You gonna come over to the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay, you can just go ahead and tap that. Tap that.
Can you lay down? No, not a paw on me. Can you just lay down? Can you lay down, boy? There you go, lay down.